Hey guys, it's Nick from Nick's Listening Space. Today we're going to take a look at the Topping D50 III. I wanted to ask the question whether or not the D50 III is better than the version S. Now, I purchased the S back when it came out, and the main reason that I purchased the S is because it was claimed to be very similar in performance to Topping's flagship DAC at that time, the D90. In my initial listening impressions of this DAC, I think right out of the gate, I immediately got the sense that there was a little bit more like meat, like in that mid-range. I still was getting the sense of it being an incredibly dynamic DAC. In terms of soundstage, I don't necessarily think there's any major difference. I personally love the sound staging and the imaging capabilities of the version S. And I think that with the version 3, you're going to get, more of that same thing. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the build quality because the build quality is slightly different. Now, it's a lighter DAC than the version S, and I think that can be attributed to the chassis. The metal itself feels to be a little bit thinner on the version S. The anodizing is also not the same quality. Now, that's not a complaint or a dig at the quality of the new one. I think that they're both great. It's just, it's slightly different. If we go around to the back side of the DAC, you'll notice that on the new one, we're now given XLR, or rather TRS balanced output, as well as single-ended RCA. For digital inputs, we get all the usual coax, optical, USB, and then we also have a Bluetooth port and a 12-volt trigger. The power port on this guy is a 5-volt power supply, which allows you to do some cool stuff. So in my testing, and for the purposes of this review, when I'm talking about the sound quality of this guy, know that I'm playing this through my linear power supply, or the Topping P50 linear power supply. In addition to that, I've also used an external battery bank. I think that the external battery bank is a really cool feature, and I have to say that it might be slightly better than my linear power supply. I think if you're going to buy this DAC, I really think that you should just go out and buy a linear power supply, or you should go out and get like an Anchor battery bank or something of that nature. I mean, you could probably get a really big battery bank and power this thing and then only charge the battery bank like once a week or something like that. Because again, it's only 5-volt, 1 amp, so it's not consuming a whole lot of power. If we go around to the front, we are given the same style of screen as we're given on the version S. Moving through the menu on this guy feels a little bit snappier and faster than it did on the version S. My concern here with the screen would probably be that it could get screen burn-in, which I'll show you, but on my Topping D50S over time, what ended up happening is the fixed screen that sits on the front, that eventually burned into the LCD or whatever this thing is. And so when you move through the menu, there's this artifacting taking place. So that would be my concern on this new version as well. But you can adjust the screen timeout settings as well as the brightness. So my recommendation would be to probably set the screen brightness to the lowest possible setting and then make sure that the screen times out. But, I think it's a minor concern, and I don't think you should necessarily not buy it because of that fear. There's a whole bunch of features if we go through the menu, including the ability to use this as a standalone DAC, or you have the ability to use its internal digital volume control. Because this guy is a DAC and preamplifier, you could kind of use it as such, meaning you could just plug this directly into a power amp and then you're good to go. It has 2 outputs, which is cool because in the menu you can toggle between sending a signal out either RCA, or you can have it sent out via TRS. individually or simultaneously, which I've talked about in one of my other videos, but that just gives you a great deal of flexibility for running this into possibly two different separate systems, or maybe you want a separate headphone amp that's not integrated into your main two-channel setup, etc. You kind of have a lot of features there with this. Now you can adjust the output voltage of this guy from 4 volts to 5 volts. In my testing, I've had it set to 4 volts. I think typically you don't want to increase gain any more than you need to. So starting with a lower voltage is probably always best recommended. You are given a whole bunch of filters on this guy as well. There's 10 filters that come pre-programmed on it. And I've basically just been running it at filter 3 and haven't really played around with the filters a whole lot. In my experience with these filters that they install on these DACs, I've not necessarily noticed drastic improvements. Where I would be interested in playing with the sound of this guy is Topping has integrated PEQ, which is an equalizer interface that you can program on your computer using a piece of software that unfortunately only works on a Windows computer. So if you have different headphones or whatever, maybe you want to set up different EQ settings for different genres. For my listening testing purposes or for this review, I have not played around with any of these. I would be curious to play around with them, and if I felt like it was worthwhile to talk about, I would probably make a whole other video just talking about those settings. And so maybe I'll do that, maybe I won't. I think if other people have an interest in that, I'll make one, but I'm using this in my HiFi system here in my living room. I'm not having this hooked up to a desktop setup. There's a whole bunch of other settings on here too, but I'm not going to go super in depth talking about them. So that's about just really all you need to know about build quality and kind of core settings for this guy. The DAC chips inside this are a dual ESS Sabre chip DAC, which the original was also a dual ESS Sabre DAC. Unlike the version S, you cannot swap op amps in this. So the S version had swappable op amps that you could play around with, which I never did because this is probably one of the first Topping products that I can remember that started to integrate swappable op amps. So even at that time, it wasn't really talked about. Granted, I'm sure people have checked it out. The measurement guys say that this is a perfect measuring DAC. So there's that. It's an incredibly dynamic and neutral sounding DAC, but it has a great deal of top end energy. So, and I think depending on the system that you have or what you pair this with, and then even a better part of it is determined by the space in which you're setting this up in, right? I think that there's a lot of top end energy there, but you might want to tame it. It's a question, does the new version fix a lot of my complaints with the old version? And I have to say that I do think right out of the gate, my initial impressions with the S is that I'm getting more of this meat on the bones in a sense. There is still this incredible clarity and nimbleness that I get with the original, yet there's now a little bit more it sounds a little bit more full in the mid-range, and so I do think it's a better DAC. Having said that, now it is a question whether or not you should upgrade if you're coming from the version S, or maybe you should just skip the version 3 and go to an all-new DAC, which, I think that there's enough similarities here that perhaps you don't upgrade. Or you do. I mean, I really don't know, because I do think it's a better DAC. I really do. And if you can stomach a more expensive DAC, my recommendation would be to go ahead and do that. If you were looking at the version S and now the version 3 came out and you're wondering, oh, should I get the version 3? Then I'm going to say yes, absolutely, you should get the version 3. You know, when we talk about kind of the sound quality of the D50 DAC, I always have felt as though, you know, this is the sound signature of this DAC is that of a studio DAC. In a sense, like what you're going to get here is as close as possible to the recording or as the artist intended. And so, I mean, what that means is that it's going to be very revealing. It's going to show you a poor recording and it's going to celebrate an incredible recording. And I think that more or less, like when I listen to this thing across a whole range of music from lyric heavy driven music to hip hop to rock and roll, like I'm just getting the signature of the music. And I think that with the version 3, it's a similar thing. And so in my system, the way I've built synergy around this DAC is by pairing it with tubes. I really think that this guy paired with tubes is just a phenomenal experience that I cannot recommend enough. So, you know, I have this thing hooked up in my reference system, which is composed of a Line Magnetic and a Schiit Freya Plus. And, you know, I'm just getting this incredible, like, deal of euphonics and holographic kind of sound staging. The imaging is still incredible here, and when I can pick out different instruments and so on and so forth. But then, like, you know, there's a characteristic about this DAC that I think might be one of the things I really love. I'll use a track as an example, but there's an artist called Daphna, and she has a song called Bitter. And you gotta listen to this song because it's just such an ethereal sound. They're doing something with her vocals and like they're overdubbing it, so her vocals are very powerful, but there's so much air in her vocals that it has this ethereal quality to it, because I think that the top end detail and extension, it just breathes like so well on this DAC. And I think that is its like redeeming qualities, if it were, is its ability to have this kind of top end energy that at times it's almost liquid because of that top end extension and its ability to reach out and like kind of swim around the space. It feels more liquid, or it sounds more liquid than maybe it even really is. And so there again, like pairing something like that with tubes, it just makes it even better. There's this greater sense of bloom, and now with the tubes integrated into the mix, there's this like sense of realism or whatever that's happening in the mid-range. My final conclusions of this guy are that I think it's better, and I think that Topping has improved the mid-range performance of this guy. We're still given this incredible, neutral, clean DAC with great extension, and yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So, you know, I don't really know what else to say about it, guys. I really enjoy this DAC. If you're looking to pick one up, yeah, go ahead. I think it's a great DAC and probably a great starter DAC if you can kind of start off in that $300 price point. And then, yeah, I mean, I probably wager from here you're going to spend a lot more money to get something better. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, if you guys have heard this DAC, or if there's another DAC around this price point that you think is better, I'd love to hear about that guy. And other than that, you know, hit the bell notification down below. Please thumbs up this video. And have a great day, everybody. See ya. Bye-bye.